Waiting patiently at her Baltimore dock is the Liberty ship John W. Brown. Her empty and long silent bridge is about to throb once again with the life that her World War II builders and crews intended for her. This ship, a wartime veteran of the Mediterranean, the Persian Gulf, the North Atlantic, and the invasion beaches of Italy and France, is only hours away from her first self-powered cruise in 46 years. Of 2,700 such ships built, only the John W. Brown and the Jeremiah O'Brien remain in operating condition. Volunteer crews rescued this grand old lady of the seas from the scrapper's torch and lovingly nursed her back to life. Over 75,000 man-hours have been spent by the members of Project Liberty Ship in this restoration effort.
Yeah, there she's coming.
Yeah, it's been a while since this has been polished. Like 40 years.
Well, Rome weren't built in a day.
Polishing brass and organizing deck supplies and lifeboat equipment are the few remaining details to be put in order prior to the August 1991 restoration cruise. If these steam deck winches could talk, they would tell stories of lifting Sherman tanks, fighter planes, artillery pieces, bombs, and endless cases of beans and bullets. These venerable old machines loaded and unloaded the millions of tons of supplies that fed the war fronts of Europe, Africa, and the Pacific. From the bridge deck, the engine order telegraph is put through its paces. In the fire room, the burners are lit and the flames adjusted. The gauge board reveals steam pressure nearing operating range and superheat close to temperature. Cleaner exhaust smoke tells us that the ship's burners are now properly adjusted. With this and other engineering details squared away, the engine is turned over as the command from the bridge calls for warming the engine. On board today is a contingent of Coast Guard inspectors. It is their duty to check every engineering detail of the ship so that they can certify her for seaworthiness and eventual passenger duty. Chief Engineer John Miner works hand in hand with the Coast Guard as the inspection progresses. A call to the bridge requests a test of the two-cylinder steam-powered steering engine. This massive machine responds instantly to the slightest turn of the wheel on the bridge. The huge quadrant transmits the engine's power to the rudder. The engine is tested in reverse. On this steamy August morning, the temperature in the engine room is well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Sweat seeps from every pore as John W. Brown's engine crew brings their beast to life. While still tied to the dock, the engine is slowly brought up to full power. As sailing hour approaches, the diesel tug, Cape Henlopen, arrives to lend a hand. After a 46-year silence, the command to cast off greets the ears of the volunteer dock crew. Stubborn, heavy lines eventually submit and release the John W. Brown to the waters of the Chesapeake Bay.
Securite, Securite, John W. Brown, preparing to sail from Pier 1 Clinton Street, bound down the bay.
Hopefully back up.
Yeah, right.
I said hopefully back up. My name is William J. Atkinson, and I was first captain in 1944. Well, today is really a red letter day. It's a day that we've looked forward to ever since the ship came to Baltimore. Since 1946, I believe, until this very day, this ship has not had her engine pushing her along. This is her actual second birth, you might say. She's been reborn from the period of the Second World War, and today is the day of her rebirth.
The chief starts the engine by rolling over the Stephenson valve linkage to the ahead setting. It is an anxious moment as the old ship springs back to life.
Hand over to the engine.
Slow ahead.
In command today is Baltimore Harbor pilot Captain Brian Hope. Working with Captain Hope is fellow pilot Captain Herb Grow.
Hard left. Hard left she is.
My name is Herb Grow. I'm been a docking pilot here in Baltimore Harbor for 40 years. And this is probably one of the happiest days of my life to seeing the John W. Brown underway 30 miles from Baltimore in Chesapeake Bay. The last time the ship ran with under her own power with as a commercial vessel was in 1946. That's a long time.
That's it.
You bet.
That's it. Don't give me no heading. Just tell me steady to go.
She just really handled it beautifully. I can't describe of how she behaved. And she's as good today as she was in 1942 when she made her sea trials. I'm very, very happy to be a part here today. And well, right now, this is part of maritime history. This will probably never happen again.
Off the bow is another great piece of history. Restored as faithfully as the John W. Brown is Fort McHenry. It was here during the War of 1812 that Francis Scott Key was inspired to write the Star-Spangled Banner. A patriotic salute from her whistle pays honor to the fort.
She's now an operating Liberty ship, such as were used during World War II. Oh, I'm quite happy. I feel very, you might say, rejuvenated, almost as if it were my own rebirth. I am very pleased indeed.
Chief Engineer John Miner.
The engine ran very good today. We came down here at 4 o'clock this morning and raised steam and put it around, started the auxiliaries and proceeded to warm up the engine. Had no troubles at all today warming up and running. Well, I spent 42 years in Sparrows Point Shipyard. Here a while back, my boss, Jim Joyce, took me out for lunch, and 2.5 years ago, he introduced me to this. At that time, I says, it'll never ride. We've been working on it. Up to now, we've had pretty good success with the volunteers and the various companies and organizations that have helped us out and donated their time and machinery and repair parts and anything we needed to help us out to get the show on the road.
One month later, on a bright September morning, 800 passengers arrived for a cruise back into history.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Watch your step. It's a little wet on the deck there.
Yeah, right. Thanks.
Morning. Morning. Folks, watch your step. The deck's a little wet up here, okay?
Okay, thank you.
I went through this one.
Supplies, box lunches, and beverages are loaded for the all-day cruise on the Chesapeake Bay. Old sailors watch and recall former days when they manned these winches and loaded these ships. Many of her crew today are Liberty Ship veterans from World War II. The grandsons of some of these original crew members turn to the chores of loading the ship, much the same as their grandfathers did half a century earlier. Loaded and with lines free, the John W. Brown departs. As we steam out of Baltimore, a modern cousin blows her boiler tubes, almost as if sending a smoky salute to the veteran of an earlier era. Container ships such as this have completely replaced freighters of the type seen in the John W. Brown.
Inside the ship house. Our voyage today will take us down the Tapsco River into the Chesapeake Bay, passing Sandy Point under the Chesapeake Bridge, about a 50-mile round trip. Just below Annapolis, the ship will stop for our memorial service to honor those gallant men and women who built, sailed, and defended ships such as this during World War II. Enjoy the trip and feel free to ask questions of any of the staff. Liberty Ship mementos and get...
I'm Wes Aarons. I sailed this John W. Brown June 43 through September 43. We left New York with a contingent of soldiers, some doctors, nurses, etc. brought them to Algiers, North Africa.
Tell me what it's like to be on this ship again today.
Well, let's see, 48 years ago. A whole bunch of memories. Sure is. I just spent a half hour down the engine room with the chief, looking at the old engine I used to work on. Quite a sight. Quite a sight. If you fellas never been down below, you ought to get a chance to get down and see that engine working. It's a sight.
It is a massive, 3-story tall, 2,500 horsepower, triple expansion monster that seems to breathe with the fire of life. All of its massive parts move with poetic motion as they synchronize to perform their collective task.
Oh, my name is DeLacy Cook, and everybody calls me Cookie. And I'm port engineer for the Project Liberty ship. Well, to run a steam engine, the first thing you have to understand it. About the expansion of the steam in it, and it's a personal, viable thing, and you can nurse it along. Actually, you can fine-tune in a steam engine just like you can a car. And you can just get a heck of a lot more satisfaction out of doing it, I believe.
We better get some oil and get some benzene.
Running a steam engine on a ship can be compared to running a large team of draft horses. The same way the teamster must constantly watch and care for his horses, the ship's engineers, firemen, and oilers must watch and care for each part of the main engine and auxiliaries. An overheated bearing in the engine room can stop the ship just as fast as a sprained ankle can stop a team of horses. The oiler must feel, listen to, and smell all of the many bearings as he makes his tour of the engine room. Oil is the best friend of the engineering crew on any ship. All of the main bearings, eccentrics, and crossheads are oiled, as well as the internal parts, such as valves and pistons.
We have 2 boilers, B&W design. We carry 220 pounds on the superheater outlet. We burn fuel oil, atomized fuel oil in the furnace. We have 4 burners in each boiler, and by burning the fuel with the water passing through the tubes and the gases of combustion over the tubes, that's where your steam is generated.
At full ahead, the engine turns at 76 RPM. The throttle wheel in the lower engine room is connected to the throttle valve 2 stories above at the steam inlet to the high-pressure valve chest. Liberty ships were designed to be self-sufficient while at sea. Engineers were expected to make repairs without the aid of dry dock or shipyard machine shop. The spare set of piston rings attached to the bulkhead at the upper engine room attests to this. The steam from the boilers is used 3 times as it passes through the engine. This allows maximum efficiency as it expands further and further while passing from one cylinder to the next. The pistons connect to the cranks, where their up and down motion is converted to rotary motion. Eccentrics provide the up and down motion required to move the valves. The crankshaft is connected directly to the propeller shaft. The thrust bearing absorbs the push of the propeller as the ship moves. Connected to the main engine by a large rocker arm is the air pump. This device pulls condensed water and excess air out of the main condenser. This reclaimed water is pumped back into the boilers to be made into steam again. Cooling water for the condenser is pumped by a small 1-cylinder steam engine and centrifugal pump through the tubes inside the condenser.
This is the steering engine that turns the rudder for the ship. It operated by a hydraulic system that comes down and goes through this system here that allows the steam to go in the different cylinders, go up and down, which turns this worm gear, turns this gear, and it's connected to the rudder. And that's how it works. There's shock absorber. There's the shaft right there.
The main engine is fitted with a small steam jacking engine. This is engaged by a worm gear when the engineers need to turn the main engine slowly and precisely during repair and overhaul. Electricity for the ship is provided by two one-cylinder steam engines directly connected to DC generators. The breaker panel distributes power around the ship.
Well, I started out as third engineer on a vessel just like this from Wilmington, California, a brand new ship. Actually, I was on the trial run, and I worked myself up from third engineer to first on it. I stayed on it 2 years, and after 1945, I went on to Victory ships and then on to C2s.
The dedicated volunteers of Project Liberty Ship have brought their engine and their ship back to life. This crew and their vessel once again operate as they both did close to half a century ago. The men and machines that work together to win a war.
Thank you. The String of Pearls, Mr. Glenn Miller.
As part of the memorial cruise, a squadron of vintage World War II aircraft fly by in a salute to the John W. Brown.
People on this ship, and I run into you, and you say you were right on this station at this particular gun on this same ship.
That's right.
And back when, what was that? What year?
From December 1944 to June of 45.
That's wonderful. That's amazing.
And I was one of the loaders on it. And aboard this ship at this time, there's another individual who was a signaller, Jim Farley. He's aboard here.
I'll be there. Isn't that interesting?
And we both served on here for 2 trips.
That's amazing.
In North Atlantic.
Good. That's very good.
So it's really a nostalgic situation.
I served on the Henry W. Middleton was built in Wilmington, North Carolina, the same ship.
That right.
You gentlemen were on a ship like this in the war?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about it.
I was on several. One we mainly was on, some of us here together today, was George E. Badger. And this guy here, he's another one of us with us today.
One of our crew right here.
Bradley.
George E. Badger. Where's Jack? You got 4 off the George E. Badger here. Each one of them.
Huh? Yeah, you got 4 of us off of one ship.
We just
made the invasion of France at Normandy.
And here's another one.
Here's another one here. This is one that stood my watch when I got sick one night. I was sure glad.
Somebody's got to work.
Huh?
Someone's got to work.
That's right. I had 12 midnight to 4 watch, and I was so sick with old quinsy and flu and stuff, remember?
You can tell that.
And he went up there and carried my watch from me.
Tell me how you feel about being here today.
It brings back some good memories and some bad memories.
Some very bad ones. And some very good ones. We had a good time. We've been meeting together. Some of us, we hadn't seen each other for 45 years until about 4 years ago. And we've been meeting together. There are 9 of us left survivors.
Surviving old sailors share memories of when they were young, memories of their ships, and memories of those who did not survive.